I'm going to be sharing with you in this video how to merge your higher self and your lower self into one. How to bring these things together, because the truth is that we really believe that these things are somehow separate. Like, oh, there's this higher self over here and there's the lower self over here, as if these things were ever separate. I'm going to dispel this myth in this video, how there's this separation between the higher self and the lower self, and how we can actually bring these things together so that you can be a full embodiment of who you prefer to be, a full actualization of who you prefer to be, rather than this like, there's this higher self over here, and there's my ego over here. There's things that are not actually as separate as we think. The ego is something that we all have within us. I think we need to integrate this. And I'm going to be sharing with you in this video exactly how you can do this. So if you're new to this channel, what I want you to do is I want you to hit that subscribe button. I want you to hit that notification bell, because you actually post a new video every single day. Also, if you want to work with me one-on-one personally, all the details for that will be down below. Now I want to ask you a question to start off this video. And that question is, are they really that different? Are they really that different? Like, because think about it, there's this higher self where you think there's this grandiose version of you it's this future version of you that's like so much better than who you are now. And to some degree that might be true. To some degree you could say that this higher version of you is separate and greater, and it's a greater version of you in comparison to the version that you are now. That's one way to look at it. But another way to look at it is like, isn't your higher self, and it's just my personal experience and opinion, isn't it just like somebody that you want to be? And isn't it like already kind of within you in this moment now? Because that makes sense. Like, your higher self can be embodied in this present moment. And I know that might sound confusing, but it's like, think about it. There's this perspective where it's like, oh, there's this higher self and then there's the ego. But like, are you not your ego? Where's the separation between like your ego and your higher self? Like, I am my ego. My higher self is me. It's me. It's just me, perhaps you could say at a higher level, but really it's just what I imagine myself to be, and then I imagine myself to be that right now in this present moment. So I want you to think about that. Like, is it really that different? Is it really so separate? Like, your higher self is you. It's not some like separate version of you. It's not some like angel in the skies. It's literally you. And once you get back into connection with your higher self, in my experience, you remember that it was you the entire time. Because when you're stuck in, you could say, the lower self or the lower realms of just being in this dense physical reality, where you believe that all reality is just so dense and physical and that's all I am, and you're looking up to this higher self, from that state of consciousness it makes sense in order to look up to some greater version of you. But also what I've seen is that once you start to embody that future self now, you realize that your higher self is just more actualization of who you prefer to be in this present moment. So by the time you really connect to your higher self, there's going to be less of a gap between your higher self and your lower self, because they're ultimately going to become one. And there's going to be the sense of completion in certain areas of your life. But then the beautiful thing is, it doesn't just complete and then that's the end of your life. You complete it and then you can merge even more into what you prefer to be, and even more. And it's about understanding that it's about bringing that higher self into this present moment now. It's about bringing that higher self into this present moment now, and really seeing that you can be and do and want and have whatever you want. So the second thing that I want to share with you is that it's really just actualization of your future self now. It's just bringing it into actualization. That's what it means to merge your higher self and your lower self into one. It's actualizing your dreams into reality now. Because here's the thing that I want to share. I want to make this, I feel like this may be a little bit confusing, so I want to go a little bit more in depth. Think about it like this. People think there's like divine consciousness, and then there's the ego. Right? That's a common belief in this spiritual community. There's divine consciousness, and then there's the ego. But when did these things become separate? Since when is divine consciousness and the ego, since when did these things separate? You know what I mean? Like, if I fully embody my ego, if I fully embody my desires, if I fully own that I have an ego, that I have an identity, that I have preferences, that I am repulsed by some things in this present moment, and I am very much gravitating towards other things in this present moment, and I have a really strong ego and a really strong identity, and it's like, I want this, and I really desire this, and I'm repulsed by other things, right? Why is that not divine consciousness? That's my question. Why is that not spiritual? Why is it that there's spirituality and then there's the ego? Why are they separate? When did they become separate? In my experience recently, as I develop more, as I step into more of my spiritual growth and even my physical growth, and just kind of this holistic understanding of life at every single level, what I've come to realize is that there's less of a separation between divine consciousness and the ego than we really think. And I think that's a great way to say it. That might be more understandable than seeing higher to left self. Like, think about it. Your ego is divine consciousness. Right now, it is my ego talking. Yes, I have an ego. Yes, Francis is an ego. Yes, I have a character. But also, I have divine consciousness speaking through me. What is the difference? What's the difference? Is there really a difference? How are these things different? Explain to me how they're different. Because I really believe they're not. Sometimes I make a video and I say, like, oh, you have complete free will choice. Everything is a choice. And I've had comments before, and I'm not attacking this comment. I think it's it's a rebuttal that makes sense. Or it's like, well, but isn't everything like predestined? Isn't everything kind of like already pre-planned? Like, we don't really have any free will because divine consciousness is just kind of flowing. Okay, but at the same time though, I have fully a choice, and I can see that I have choices to make, and I can control my mind in a certain direction and a certain trajectory. And I found that if I don't take full control of my mind and take full control of how I think in a certain direction, I become very fragmented. Now, I can be tapped into, I can be conscious that I'm divine consciousness and not take control of my mind, but it's just going to be a lesser efficient ego. It's still going to be ego, but it's going to be a less efficient ego with really bad results. And I'm not going to be trustworthy ego, and people aren't going to trust me. That's still divine consciousness. Or divine consciousness can take form and play as a really dedicated ego, committed in a certain direction, and where I know my values, I know what I care about, I know what I tolerate, what I don't tolerate, I know what kind of people I want in my life, I know what kind of people I don't want in my life, and I can take full control and have that feeling and power of choice. And you can say, well, isn't that feeling and power, the fact that you're living in control of it, isn't that just kind of like an illusion? Isn't it like an illusion? Because like in reality, everything's just kind of happening, right? And there's no free will. If it's an illusion, so be it. I desire to consciously create an illusion of control. Why not? Because what's the alternative? The alternative is to feel not in control, to feel like there's not people around you that you can trust and support, and they can support you. I don't like that game. If we're playing a game here and we're creating our reality, I would like to create a reality where I'm fully in control to the highest degree possible, and I'm with other people that also believe that they're fully in control to the highest degree possible. And I think that has zero contradiction to the fact that we have a higher self and that divine consciousness is flowing through us and all these things. So personally for me, I've come to see that the actualization of my future self in the present moment now is the most spiritual path I can take. So this is going to sound a little bit perhaps triggering to people or confusing, but I've personally come to see that the more that I can embody my ego and be, as you could say, in a way, as egotistical as possible, and embrace my lower self as much as possible, like fully, consciously embrace that lower self as much as possible. That is pretty much the highest path to merge with your higher self and to become the best person. Because unless you face all those lower aspects of yourself and all these shadow aspects, you're not going to be able to progress to greater and more efficient and more divine ways of working with who you are, because you're going to be resisting those old self patterns. You have to move through them. One of the things that my old mentors told me is that the only way out is through. You cannot move out of anything unless you move through something. If you move through something, then you move out of something. But if you're not going through it directly, fearlessly, and to move through the resistances and not to resist the resistances, not to allow the resistances to control you, you're going to be stuck in the lower self. So you're not going to ascend to these higher, greater versions of you unless you honor the fact that you have an ego, you have desires, and ultimately desire is your highest compass as well, but that's a whole nother video. People resist their desires. They think, oh my gosh, if I want this relationship, or I want to make more money, or I want to be a more embodied version of me, or if I want to be disciplined, that's just ego, ego, ego. So what if it's ego? What's wrong with ego? Since when is the ego bad? You need an ego to survive. The ego is not a bad thing. The ego is something that is absolutely necessary. And if you don't have an ego, how are you going to have relationships with people around you? If you're just divine consciousness and you don't have humanity and you don't want to be a person, then this video is probably not for you. And I have a very high, how do I say it? I have a high intuition, or even I could say logic, that many people, they pull towards just these ideas of divine consciousness because they really don't know how to meet their own needs. They don't know how to meet their needs as a human, as an ego, and to understand that being a human and an ego is just as important as having that connection to your higher self. So the thing that I want to include this video with is the understanding that really what you want to do here in your life, in my personal opinion, what I think we're all here to do to some degree, to a very large degree. I'm not going to sit here and stand here and tell you like, I'm standing here. I'm not sitting. I'm not going to stand here and tell you like, oh, you know, like I know everything and I have the answers with conviction. I have conviction in a lot of areas in my life. I think that I can speak confidently in many areas, not every single area, but in this topic, I think I can speak around pretty high conviction. So I'll conclude the video here, which is that I think that one thing that we're meant to do is to lessen the gap between the lower self and the higher self, and to bring them more into one. That's what I think our purpose is here. So if you have a desire, that's literally your soul guiding you towards something in the physical reality, and then to embody that, and then to integrate it, and then do that again and again and again and again. So the goal is to bring them into one, merge them into one, bring these two things together. Stop seeing them as these separate things. If you test this, I can pretty much promise you that your life is just going to be so much better. Personally, when I had an idea that there was a separation between these two things, not that you can't ask your higher self for guidance or ask the divine for guidance, but eventually bring that into your own personal sense of being is so important. You know what I mean? Bring it into your sense of being. Become your own person. Become your own individual. Become your own being. That's so critical, I think, for fulfillment, peace, and to help others, and to live an awesome life, to live an epic life. Do you want to live an epic life? Or do you want to live a fragmented, confused life? I don't want to be confused the majority of my day. I don't want to be confused. If I'm confused, I want to know how to deal with that confusion to get back into clarity. For me, confusion is a cue to get back into clarity. For me, feeling fragmented is my cue to get back into clarity with who I want to be. That's what I believe. So what I'm trying to say here is that I think that one of our purposes here is to lessen the gap between these two things, to bring them into one, and to more embody that lower self into reality and bring that higher self into reality and merge them into one. Be your own person. Be who you want to be. Embody it fully with zero guilt, with zero shame. If you see guilt and shame, that's your cue to take that and to transmute it into more of actualization in this moment. Because guilt and shame is going to keep you stuck. And with that, I conclude this video. Once again, if you want to work with me one-on-one personally, all the details for that will be down below. I recently just launched email coaching. I also have just a couple spots left for my one-on-one coaching program. Not all people are qualified. So if you do want to see if you qualify for that, once again, all the details for that will be down below. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next